So I guess, I suppose the first question should be, what is the state of the game at the moment as regards young talent?
I think it's always in a good place. With young players, coming through, and um, whichever club I've worked at, whether that's been Bradford Bulls, Hull Kingston Rovers, Warrington Wolves, certainly Castleford Tigers, in 1999, Leeds Rhinos, 2000, 2008, etc., and obviously second stint at Leeds Rhinos. There's never been a time, even through difficult times at some of those clubs, where there hasn't been talent. For me, the key to talent, is recognising it, making sure that you can facilitate it, with the right staff, with the right, quality facilities, and be patient. Junior talent, youth talent takes time, and the people within, talent development, they'll be the ones that can see the talent coming through. Usually it takes time, for the hierarchy, head coaches, to be able to recognise that they're in a difficult position where most owners, most boards, most fans just want to see wins. And it certainly takes time, to build youth development. It takes several years, to be able to get players running concurrently and flowing into a first team environment. And it can be done, but I think patience is the key, and recognising the importance of it as well. I think the community game take a lot of credit, for that. They've obviously gone through some difficult times, over the last several years, and they keep going, they keep turning up, keep doing the best. Rules and regulations have tightened up, certainly for the right reasons, within the community game, within the professional game, to make sure that all junior players are safeguarded and looked after. And the response has been really positive, really good, from the community game through, the Rugby Football League, making sure that things are working well. And when those things are working well, you will always get talent. You always get talent. I think, and this is my theory, I think we've lost some of the heartlands of industry, over the last maybe 20, 30 years, even 10 years, where we used to get, our bank of talent from, but there's still, a lot of junior players playing rugby league. And, there's a lot of players in rugby union that also can play rugby league as well.
And you want to feed in your best juniors into a winning setup if you can. So we saw last year with St Helens, for example, a little bit maybe with Castleford, that the danger of bringing too many kids in together when a team is struggling is that it sets them back a little bit. Or you've got to wait then until they do come back into the first team and they know exactly what they're doing and the experience has been good for them. But it's another fine balance.
There's a method, yeah, Phil. There's a method to making sure, that you integrate players, one within a first grade squad and one, when it comes to performing in the first grade team. And if you get your senior players right, with the right attitude, the right application, and the balance of age correct, within your squad, then you can have a consistent flow. But to introduce too many too soon and try and flood it can have a negative impact. And players have got to be ready. They've got to be football ready. I think they've got to have a mindset, and a maturity that's ready, and they've also got to be physically ready to be able to play, Super League week in, week out. And that just doesn't happen, at 17, 18, 19 now. That's gradual. And, most coaches have started to recognise that and the importance of looking after the players so that they actually play for a lot longer.
I think I didn't introduce the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. 4020 Live. What is it, 10th of February? Coming off exciting Challenge Cup weekend, which we'll talk about. I wanted to ask you, John, because I was thinking about this when Phil said you were coming in. What do you look for in a young player when you're going out there and your team are out there scouting? What are you looking for that you think this is obviously it's not just one thing, but that this player could become a professional one day?
There's not just one thing. I mean, one of the things that always catches my eye when I go to a game very open-minded, and you might get told about this player and that player when you're off to watch a certain team, but I always try and go really open-minded and try and recognise the player that wants to compete, the player that wants to put effort in, even though it might be a little bit scruffy. You know, the effort and the competitive nature. When you see somebody doing that and talking good in and around his teammates, talking positively and encouraging, and the add-ons to that is that actually, you know, he's got some really good skill as well. He's going to be a really good athlete. There's some lovely late development in him. He's going to be a talented player, you know, for the position that he probably will play in. And by the way, you know, you've got to be very careful you don't make an early rash judgment on where a player's actually going to end up playing. A player playing at 6 for a community club could end up playing centre, could end up playing wing, full-back, could end up, you know, playing 7 or 9. There's so many variations, and that evolves, you know, as he goes through, you know, a system, and, you know, hopefully most clubs try and find, you know, the best position that suits a player. But parents play a significant part. They really do, you know, and how they are, you know, in and around, you know, the community club, and how they conduct themselves, you know, them lovely basic standards that as parents, you know, we all try and endure to, and try and be consistent in that area, and not get over involved and over embroiled, you know, in the game and the win and the biff bash bosh. And he did that to my son and all that sort of stuff, you know. The game's tough, the game's hard, it's always going to be competitive, but there has to be an element of control in there. So it's not just one thing, it's a variation, and getting to know him over a period of time as well.
I know this seems like a daft thing to bring up, but when you're at a junior game and you know that parents are giving their kids a quid a try or a fiver or so, that, I'm assuming that this is from my perspective. That's not great in terms of trying to engender someone a team spirit, because then you're immediately going and thinking, if I score a few tries, I can get the latest PlayStation game or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'd probably prefer, you played really well today, son. Come on, I'll go buy you a meal. That's a nice touch, but I'm not so fussed about, you know, the £5 for a try, etc., etc. I'd prefer, right, for every time you set your mate up with a nice try and a generous opportunity, yeah, I might treat you. That'd be me.
I guess the other thing that's difficult, and you mentioned it, is in the word development, is that physical development, that you might see a talented player at 15 who's playing at half, and in most community clubs the most talented players generally do play in the halves, but you don't know if that's going to develop into a second rower by the time they're 18 with a growth spurt, or they've been through a scholarship. I mean, how can you even judge that, or do you not try at that stage?
You don't over try. You've got an idea, Phil, of where a player, you know, is actually going to end up, but it can change, and being open, you know, to an understanding to change, and the players also, you know, being like that, that makes a difference, you know, to players, and it creates broader opportunities for them as well if they can play more than, you know, one position. But no, it don't make a massive difference, you know, on physically how they're developing. It's where they're going to play, you know, in that particular team, and what their body shape will fit a position. Yeah, their speed, their evasion, their skill set will fit a position.
In terms of something that we've spoken about before, that the pools of talent are fertile but limited, and you've already hinted at some of the reasons why that might be with the deindustrialisation of the north of England. You've started fishing in different pools, partly out of necessity, but partly out because as a game we need to find this new talent. So I know that most people will throw their hands up. Rugby union's quite youth rugby union is quite a fertile area for you. You're not frightened to go to football matches or athletics just to try and see what's out there.
I think you should be open-minded as well, you know. And there's a lot of footballers, you know, that certainly myself, I know for a fact I'm a better football player than a rugby league player, and I probably only went down the rugby league pathway because my dad and my uncle Alfie Weston, he were a professional rugby league player, but football were my interest. So far better, you know, at football. Most of my mates at school, you know, they all knew that as well. And there's lots of players out there, you know, that again, you know, become professional rugby league players, you know, that used to be footballers. There's a lot of players now, you know, that actually rugby league players that they try their hand at rugby union as well. And rugby union is a tough game, and it produces some really talented rugby league players, and we've certainly done our own work. Simon Bell and myself and the club in general have been very proactive in let's not ignore rugby union. There's some terrific young players in rugby union. They're not all going to get onto, you know, the rugby union pathway. We don't have in Yorkshire a Premiership rugby union team. The Yorkshire rugby union pathway, you know, like they're under 17s and under 18s pathway scheme is good, and there's some talented players in there. And if those opportunities in rugby union they hit a cul-de-sac, then, and if we're interested in them, we'll try and get them on board and give them an opportunity in rugby league. So yeah, it's not just one field, and you know, we know that to a certain extent, you know, we don't have a huge talent pool, you know, in rugby league, but we have a very competitive talent pool in rugby league, and we have players, you know, that want to achieve things, you know, that actually, you know, when they get an opportunity on a scholarship, the majority really do take advantage of that, and they do progress alongside of, you know, still working, you know, to high standards in the community club. But rugby union can't be ignored, and other sports can't be ignored, and we've started to benefit from that. And school rugby, there's a school in Leeds, Coburn High School. Just looking at them and how they've developed over the last 2 or 3 years, and the players that they're now, you know, starting to filter in, you know, to scholarships. It's a credit, you know, to them as a school, and their ideals of creating, you know, sporting image of, let's give these players and junior players every chance, you know, to actually, you know, be creative. They've got some great facilities. Been up there, and as I look round, they've got 4G. They've just had a new 4G pitch put in there, and they're really trying, you know, to connect with the community. You know, and up Dewsbury Road, you know as well as I do, it's a real rugby league area, not far from Hunslet, you know, and it's making a difference. And it's not just with, you know, people that have been involved in rugby league for many years. We've got 2 terrific players, you know, that are from African origin, and they're doing really well. Dylan they'll know I'm talking about if they connect, you know, with this podcast.
In terms of geographical location as well, I know that the odd Saturday morning you might be in Northampton watching Midlands under-18s rugby union. The field now has to be trawled wider.
It does, yeah. I think it's important, you know, that we recognise, and I had a chat with Ian Blease today, you know, just about that, and you know, how far do we go when it comes to talent ID?
Las Vegas, I think.
Yeah,
it's the next one.
Yeah, I think so. You know, we have to.
No, but the combine there is going to throw up, you know,
Absolutely.
American athletes who might be college graduates who've played American football all their lives, but physically are exactly the kind of specimens that we could give an opportunity to.
And there will be players. It's finding that one player that has that desire, that wants to achieve something, you know, in rugby league. And I agree totally with what you've just said there, that we have to continually look broader, you know, than just, you know, our heartlands, you know, of rugby league. And one of the big ones with me is, you know, that I genuinely hope they've had some difficulties, you know, over years of London. But London have produced some marvellous Super League players and Championship players for many, many years. And hopefully, you know, that can be, you know, improved and developed how it used to be. Because there's a lot better talent down there, Phil. And we also have to be mindful of developing talent, you know, in areas beyond, you know, our so-called heartlands, you know, up in the north.